Hey everybody, we are Francis, Martin, and Robert, and this is Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Welcome back to Snakes and Otters. This is episode 33.
I'm Martin.
I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis, sitting in the captain's chair. It's one of our Code of Honor episodes, gentlemen. This has become a really fun exercise that we've done. We each pick a particular favorite quotation and explore how that works for each of us. This is our third time of doing this, and this is a fun concept. I really enjoy doing these things here.
It gives a listener a window into things that matter to us, what makes us tick. It's very personal stuff.
It is. We also hit those universal questions. We really want to make these reasons. Yeah. You should listen for the quotes because they are good quotes.
They matter.
They matter. Exactly. That's right. And since I'm the captain, I get to go first, which I kind of like that this time here.
I like it.
And I'm actually going to stay with my format that I've done. The past two, I've always gone to pop culture. I've done Star Trek and I've done Babylon 5. I'm going back to Star Trek. Again, here.
Big surprise.
Big surprise. That's exactly right. Oh, but you're going to love this one because I had you in mind when I was doing this one here. But I'm going to steal. It's going to be Spock again. Not from the movies, going back to the original series this time. And I'm going to get your most hated episode of all, Robert.
Oh, joy.
Because you know which one this is.
Yes.
Surprisingly, and this is one that's often the episode is often commented upon as being one of the meh episodes. Some people like it, some people don't, but it's certainly not usually not in the top.
There's not too many people that are lukewarm on this episode.
That is correct. People are very opinionated about this one here. But the quotation is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant, as Spock often is. And I'll give you the quotation first, and then I'll give you the episode, and who wrote it and where it came about, and then we can kind of go with it from there. The quotation is from the episode "Let That Be Your Last Battlefield." Third season, Frank Gorshin is guest starring along with Lou Antonio. For those of you who may not remember the episode, it's the episode where you have a half black and half white, or half white and half black, depending on what you're talking about here, series of makeup for these two people from the planet Charon.
Literally, white as in mime face on one side, and black as in
mime face on the other side. And they are at each other's throat for racial reasons for the entire episode. And they are the epitome of the worst quality of racism. How it eats away and destroys. That's one of the good things about the episode.
Well, I think so much about the eats away and destroys so much as it's just and this is the reason why I don't like it. It's just so in your face. There's no subtlety to it.
That's correct. That's heavy-handed.
It's so heavy-handed. It does make a good point for the time because as Martin said, we were talking about it during the show prep. It's a point that in 1968 was good to say. It needed to be pointed out often.
Looking at it through the lens of 2020, it seems heavy-handed and stupid and in your face, which is a good thing, really.
Yeah.
But in 1968, through that prism, it's things that need to be said.
Right. And the whole point was that the differences truly were superficial. They were the same color, literally pure white, pure black, as in colors. One just had it on one side, and the other had it on the other.
And they used that for the reason for their hatred.
Right.
And the show was written.
And one of the parts of it that's supposed to be kind of in your face is the crew of the Enterprise doesn't know what they're on about. They don't get it.
They don't understand it.
They don't get it.
That's the brilliant.
Both of the aliens look exactly alike to them.
Right.
And then
which is his own racist comment.
Yeah, it's a line that I think is the Lou Antonio says, "Don't you see the difference?"
That's right. Can't you tell? No, I think it's Frank Gorshin. Yeah, Frank Gorshin says that. He says Locke's people are they're white on the right side. All his people are white on the right side. And of course, the audience is going, "Huh?" And the characters Spock and Kirk and the rest of them are going, "Huh?" Which, of course, is the point, that racial differences are so superficial. How do they come to be where they're going to be at here? Oliver Crawford's the guy that actually did the teleplay on that. So the quotation I'm going to give you has to kind of be credited to him. But it's also Gene L. Coon's final episode. He did the story treatment before that. So who
this is near the end of the run of the original
that's
series.
correct. This is episode 69. There were only 78 episodes. So it's about a little past halfway through the third season. It's getting close to the last bit.
This has got to be aired. When was it aired? Like January of 68, something like that?
Yeah, January 10th, 69, actually. It was the original air date is when it happened. So this is... Yeah.
Several months then after Dr. King is killed.
That's correct. Yeah, a lot of that, they would have been pre-producing this shortly after that happened. So racism is very much on the mind of the people.
So again, it's through that prism of 1968, 1969. It needs to be said.
That's right, because the story was originally written way back in the first season, and it was shelved because they didn't think we could do it. Now it morphed a lot. Gene L. Kuhn did it. He came aboard late in the first season, so he's the one that put it all together. But it was rewritten, like I say, by Oliver Crawford. Roddenberry apparently loved the episode. The networks were a little bit worried about it because it was so heavy-handed. But it still has those moments of brilliance in it. And the quotation I'm going to give you, and I'll give you the context for it because it hits our universal side. Beale is speaking with the crew of the Enterprise, Frank Gorshin's character, and he says that his adversary, Loki, cannot change. Because Kirk says, well, why don't you talk to him? Why? Maybe they can change. He says, Beale says, they cannot change. And Spock comes off with this great moment, with this great quotation. Change is the essential process in all of existence. Speaking from that scientific background, but also from that very human background, he would consider that an insult, but we don't, that change is the essential process of all existence. It is inevitable. To say that someone or something cannot change is an absolute lie. And it is a howling at the moon because you don't like it.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what I love about this episode.
That is so powerful.
Change is absolutely, it's the essential process in all existence. Everything changes.
Even in death, things change.
Correct.
Things decompose.
That's exactly right.
Nothing
changes.
is static. The only time everything will be static will be at the heat death of the universe.
That's right. Yeah, and that's something.
And we presume that we don't even know for sure if that's going to happen. That's a theory.
That's what's so and that
like
was
Nick Fury says. We will continue to act as if the world is going to spin on, I'm getting that wrong, but.
Yeah, but you're exactly right. I can't give you the quote myself either, which is surprising. I'm usually good at that, but no. But this one here, it's one of the reasons I like this quotation. That's kind of why we do this episodes. Is this says something. This says something powerful. I've used this quotation in speeches all over the place. I usually say a wise man said, depending on my audience, if I want to actually, tell them who actually that did it.
You want to display your geekdom?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But it's so brilliant. Change is the essential process of all of existence. If we don't understand that, then we are simply weak-minded. Yeah. And that's kind of what the point of this episode was, is these people are so weak-minded, it ultimately destroys them. Because, not to spoil the episode, but why not? It's
been 40 years.
It's been 40 years.
50
years. I think we can say that the fact that they go back to their planet, Charon, and they're all dead. They've all killed each other. The only two people are left are Loki and Beale, and they both escape the ship and continue the chase, even though everything is dead. And that's the commentary the Enterprise crew makes. I think it was Uhura that says, their planet's dead. Does it matter which one's right? Sulu, excuse me. Does it matter which one's right? And Spock says something like, the only thing that matters to them is their hate. Again, heavy-handed. But it does really lay out some really great truths on that. And that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, but there's an awful lot of crap wrapped around
I'm
that.
gonna leave it to you. I'm gonna leave it to you because I know this is your worst of all.
Well, right up there with it is, and the children shall leave.
That's correct. That's my worst of all. Right.
To me, there's just no worse examples of storytelling than these. The reason I don't like this one has nothing to do with that quote. It has nothing to do with the fact they're dealing with racism. Right. It's how they deal with it. Mm-hmm. And maybe, because as Martin alluded to, and we kind of glossed over that a little bit, when you said that it seems so heavy-handed, so in your face to us in today's world, you said maybe that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think I have such trouble with it, is because I feel like the guys on the Enterprise. It's like, what the F is the big deal here.
Right.
The differences are superficial. The difference in which side is pure white in skin tone and pure black in skin tone is as important as whether or not you have blonde hair or brunette hair. Now, it's not as important as whether or not you have red hair, but that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, I mean, gingers steal souls, so you got to be careful of them.
Gingers are an endangered species, according to some.
Now, that'd be a real shame.
I have two, believe me, yes. My wife and daughter are both gingers. Anyways, so, maybe it's a good thing that we hate this episode for that heavy-handedness, because it feels intellectually insulting to us.
That's exactly you said it. That's exactly why I have my issues with this, because you're right. It presumes the audience to be weak-minded.
Yes.
And that's an insult.
Have to be taught.
You have to be taught this much here. Usually Star Trek was at its best when it was nuanced and subtle.
Yes.
And it created dichotomies, there's that word again we like to use, that we can explore. This didn't have any of that. This is thinking why are we wasting time on this? Because this doesn't seem to be something that should... Nobody can be that stupid or obtuse.
In 1968, I wonder, because obviously I was 2 years old. You were not quite 3 when this would have come out.
Yeah, I was 3 shortly after that. Yeah.
Well, I guess this was late in 68.
This is early 69. I was 3.
So you were 3. I was 2.5. You were 2.5.
Yeah.
We would we'd have no memory of this even being on TV.
No. Well, our memories are all of the reruns that we caught in the 70s originally.
But when our memories start of this, say let's shoot for 10 as the average age, when we're really engaging the episodes beyond just, this is down here, Sunday morning fare.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
It just boggles my mind that so little time has passed from the original airing to when we really become aware of it. And it's like, oh my God, this is just awful. And maybe it's awful because as a kid, it's just something we don't understand.
It's not an adventure story when we're kids. I mean, those were the episodes we really
right. You remember the Gorn and Captain Kirk whacking it out on the planet, things like that, and you remember the self-destruct sequence in here. That's about the only excitement this episode had.
Yeah, that's really the only
it's kind of
piece.
Shoehorned in because you had to have something besides this.
Right.
And difficult.
This episode features one of my things that I don't like about science fiction. Sometimes is they make the characters too powerful.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So because that's part of it, they can take over the ship. They can
sloppy writing.
Yeah, it's that magic.
Well, it's a canned episode.
It's
practically entirely on the ship.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's a bottle show.
And that's something I don't like throughout science fiction or fantasy stuff, is when they make the aliens or the baddies or whatever just too powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because if they can do stuff with matter by looking at it, then what's the whole point of any of this?
That's right. Yeah, they
why does Thanos need the Infinity Stones if he can just look at stuff and it moves? I mean, why not just throw every planet out of its orbit into its own sun?
Or every other planet. Yeah. You only get rid of half of the world.
No, he only wants to get rid of half of everything.
And to tie this back to the whole point, this is our code of honor in this quote. Yeah. This episode, it really flies in the face of that quote, because it presumes that you're too stupid to change.
Right. Yeah. If you don't change, it's because you're stupid.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, what is so intellectually insulting.
If you try not to change, because ultimately you will change. You have to change.
And the audience in 1968 that needs to hear that lesson probably isn't watching Star Trek.
Well, that's very true too.
That's probably a very good point. Yeah.
Well, you raise another good point. Star Trek in the third season was 10 p.m. on Friday nights. It's the dead zone. That's one of the reasons that they said.
Maybe those are the people, because the people who don't need it are probably the younger people. They're not sitting at home Friday night at 10 o'clock.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So maybe those are the people who do need to hear it. I don't know. But by the time we become intellectually able to engage this, it's like, I know this stuff. Mm-hmm. This is...
Yeah.
But I also recognize that not everybody I grew up with felt that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Not everybody feels that way today.
Sure, that's correct.
50 years later, which is astonishingly, disgustingly sad.
Unfortunately, yeah, there's certain, sin never completely goes away.
Of course not. So, That's yours.
That's mine. That's right.
So before I hit mine, though,
Yes.
I do have a bit of a melancholy chore. Speaking of Star Trek, this
Yes, that's
plugs
right.
in. We want to say a little
Raise a
memorial,
glass.
raise a glass
Yeah.
for Dorothy Catherine Fontana,
DC.
better known as DC Fontana.
Oh, yeah.
She was one of Roddenberry's, I guess, early writing partners.
She was his secretary originally, and she basically did something that women in those days were not supposed to do, but she pushed to say, let me write, Gene.
Yeah, so she became a writer and editor and a freelancer.
Yeah. In
And
days
was
when
one
women
of-
didn't do this.
Yeah, one of the first women to ever write, especially for science fiction television,
Yeah.
but she also wrote westerns and everything. And she ties right in to your quote because she is responsible for a lot of what we know of Spock, his backstory.
That's correct. She did
Sarek
that.
and Amanda, his parents, his half-human side, all of the Vulcan culture. And she was the primary writer on Journey to Babel, where a lot of
correct.
this is laid out.
That's right.
Very famous episode.
She also did a sequel to that that's well worth, it's probably the best animated episode they did, and they did a lot of great animated episodes. They had a lot of science fiction writers that wrote a lot of really good stuff for those, Samuel L. Peoples and many others. She actually wrote the animated episode Yesteryear, where Spock, an adult Spock, has to go back in time to save his younger self from death. And doing that, the older Spock does what any of us would want to do. We go back and observe our familial ties and family of origin as a child there when it happens, and recognizes that some of this stuff that made us who we are is pretty good after all. And he makes peace with that. And that's a tribute to DC Fontana. She understood familial dynamics. One of the reasons Journey to Babel works so well is because she got that. Spock and his family and the tensions thereof, that's what made it a great episode.
Well, it's character driven.
That's exactly right.
And for an animated episode, that is a phenomenal piece of writing.
That's right. You've got 22 minutes to nail this down, and she does so well with that. And she also did several novelizations.
Yes, she did.
Of the story that continued the themes that she laid down through here. She was a tremendous writer, and she will be missed.
Yeah, so she passed away just about a month or so ago from today.
Yeah.
As we were doing this episode, December 2nd. She was 80 years old. And again, a real pioneer.
Yes.
Yep.
A tremendous person that her contributions need to be remembered.
Yep.
Amen to that.
She was one of those blazing a trail of change.
That's right.
To tie back to your statement there.
Yeah.
So, raising a glass of bourbon to DC Fontana.
Yes, glass of
Amen.
bourbon to DC Fontana's.
I'm having a little bit of larceny here for this particular episode. A very good bourbon. Very good bourbon.
Yeah, we feature that occasionally. Have we done Arseny before?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did
have.
that when we were in Mine
That's right. I thought we did, yeah.
for one of those episodes.
Yeah,
I think
that's where I first picked it up, and boy, we're working it. That's good.
It's a relatively newer bourbon. It's only been around for a short period of time compared to some of these other brands.
Yep.
They did a good job,
stuff.
as always.
Yep. So, Martin, I think you have a quote for us.
So, yeah, now this one's... I don't think it's going to mesh as well as we've done before.
Well, that's all right.
But it's one of those that pops in my head all the time when I look out at the world today.
Okay.
When I'm bombarded with opinions and news and Twitter and everything. And it's one of those that helps me sort out that stuff. And it's don't eminentize the Eschaton. It's a William F. Buckley.
Okay.
He kind of steals it from Eric Vogelin. So it goes back into the 50s and 60s. But it's one of those where you're taking this concept from theology and making it this watchword for coping with the world. And
Only Buckley could make a phrase like "immanentize the eschaton" a watchword.
You might want to. You
definitely have to explain that for the
Yes,
listeners.
that's where I'm headed. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Good.
So, what it means though is the eschaton is heaven.
Okay.
It's the final world.
Right.
Imminent is the real world.
Okay.
Where we are now.
Right.
So don't immanentize the eschaton is, look, you're not going to make our world heaven.
Right.
Our world is not perfectible.
Right.
Whether you believe in heaven or you're Christian or whatever, immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
This world is not perfectible. Humans are not perfectible creatures.
Right.
That's something we've discussed, and that's always one of my things.
Though we strive for it.
Yes.
It does not mean we do not try.
There is grace in the striving, as we've said before.
Right.
But humans are not perfectible creatures. Therefore, the world we inhabit is not a perfectible world. So, our structures, our institutions have to be built around that concept of understanding there's no perfection here, but we can build to cope with that.
Oh, yes. In other words, you should always recognize that no matter how good you can make things, humans are still involved. So therefore,
Yes.
it's not you.
Yes.
If you set yourself up for an unattainable goal, then you're less likely to try.
And
So-
it always fails and always leads to disappointment, and it always leads to the notion that institutions must be destroyed.
So let me throw this out to see if we can universalize the statement so that everybody can understand
I
it.
think you're going to.
So would we say in layman's terms that what this means is hope for the best and plan for the worst?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's right.
Law should be constructed in that idea. The things we do as a society, as a polity, I think is the right word.
Yeah.
Should be driven by that notion. Not that, oh, well, if we pass a law, then everything's going to be perfect. No, it's not. We can't eminentize the eschaton.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Yes, you're saying
Because
that
it seems like every government program now is built towards the idea of we can perfect our experience.
yeah,
of
it's
this world.
there's a level of hubris that's built into the way things are done.
I
here.
love the word hubris.
I know that's one of my favorite words we like to use.
I love when you pull out hubris.
It's because, and this is trying to say, don't do that. Because if you expect this to be this magic bullet, this panacea or whatever,
yeah.
you're probably going to expect everything to be that way, and it's just not fair.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not right. It's not even close to being correct.
It has a very real danger of this. And really, I think this is where we have landed, maybe because people have tried to immanentize the eschaton. Mm-hmm. And that is that if you think what you're trying to bring about is the perfect, as opposed to the good or the best that we can do, then anybody who opposes you is evil.
Is evil.
Oh yeah, we go back to that. We talked about
Yes.
that.
Yes.
You can't make
Political
a deal.
differences are no longer policy. It's I want to do something that perfects the world, and if you oppose me, you are evil.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
it's-
which is
it's
kind
exactly
of like
where we are.
An almost necessary conclusion to this process you're talking
Yes,
about.
exactly.
If you think that you are perfecting things, then anyone who opposes you, therefore, must be evil, because that's the only way that you can't, nobody recognizes the humanity in the other
Yeah.
side.
Right.
And
Because
you
if it's
recognize-
perfect, it's automatically good.
Well, you're idolatrizing
Yes.
yourself and your
Yeah.
policies, which by definition can't be. Napoleon
And-
was
and
famous for that, thinking of himself as greater than God. He's not the only one. That's
But
what happens.
you get to the point of, don't you understand? I'm making the world perfect. I cannot brook dissension. And we're very much in that kind of a position in our world right now. There cannot be dissension. There cannot be disagreement. Therefore, you must be destroyed. If you don't agree with X, then time to put you against the wall.
Right. It's like
That's immanentizing the eschaton.
Well, yeah, it's
Put them against the wall.
Right. It's like, to use a funny example, it's like the Facebook meme that you both have probably seen. It's like, guy says, "Oh man, I love apples. Why do you hate oranges? What about grapes? Why do you hate them? What's wrong with you? What do you have against other fruits? What about vegetables? Why do you hate all of them?" Just because you like one thing doesn't mean you hate something else.
Yeah.
Just because you disagree doesn't mean you hate what you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
All of that stems from thinking you and your ideas are not only better than what anybody else has, but better in the moral sense.
Well, yeah, because you're
perfect,
using a
good, God ordained.
It's no longer
whatever.
legislation. It's a drive to save the world,
Right.
And you're the only one that can do it.
It is legislating morality.
It's even more than that. It's legislating being a savior. I'm advocating a policy that makes me the savior of the world.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but it also, it's very self-serving too, in the fact that if you are the savior of the world, then you cannot be opposed. Therefore, you're not open to influence or adjustment in any way. It's an idolatrization of the self, and they fail to learn that basic understanding. Man cannot be God.
Yeah.
And it's the same story of Frankenstein, Jurassic Park, and so many other things.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about here. You're trying to become God. Thou shalt not.
Yeah. And beyond, and those are all perfect. And I even use it again as this grounding of, okay, you're attacking an institution. Yes, there was an issue. There was a problem. But it's not the institution that must be destroyed. You have to understand institutions are made of people. People are not perfectible. There's always going to be this. And we can reform and move forward without scorched earth. You don't always have to take off and nuke the entire site from orbit.
Because it's not always the only way.
Yes.
Right. Well, the what was the thing you just said before that?
Grounding. I like that word, by the way.
Oh, yes. That
was a very good way of,
and that's what this quote does for me. It's that ground floor way for me to analyze what's coming at me.
Yeah.
Don't eminentize the eschaton.
I'm liking it.
It's very good, sir. Very good.
Yeah.
It's not very pronounceable for some people, but that's all right.
I may be mutilating the pronunciation myself. So.
Well, there was only one William F. Buckley. As we
That's
know.
true. That's
right.
true.
Yes.
So, speaking of William F. Buckley, Robert, you had something?
Are you saying I have something from William F. Buckley, or am I...
No, you don't. I know.
Genius intellect.
Genius
like
intellect is where I
Buckley.
was going there.
Okay,
Yes, exactly
well, I can
right.
deal with that. So I'm going to go... it's a takeoff of themes that I touch on a lot, and I apologize to listeners if I beat this drum constantly. But
it's a good drum.
It's a good drum, but it sort of plays into Martin what you had just talked about with immanentizing the eschaton, and that is that in Matthew 25, Jesus gives us the parable of the sheep and the goats. Right?
Oh, yeah, one of my favorite scripture passages.
And I love this because it's a reminder of how we need to... A reminder of so many things. The need for humility. The need to take care of one another. No matter what we think of them. So the whole point of that parable is when Jesus says, what you do to the least of these, you do to me. Right? So because the whole point of the parable is, he says to the sheep, enter into the kingdom of God, for when you saw me hungry, you gave me food. When you saw me thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was sick, you visited me, blah, blah, blah.
All those many corporal works of mercy.
Yes. And he says to the goats, depart from me into the eternal fire, because when I was hungry, you did not feed me. It's basically the opposite of what the sheep did. They both say, Lord, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you thirsty? And so on. And that's when he says this, what you did to the least of these, you do to me. Part of that's that brotherhood of man that for genetics, we all know, you go back far enough, we're probably all related somewhere, right? So certainly in geographic areas.
Right.
But it also goes to a theological sense because for a Christian, there's the brotherhood that we gain through baptism. Because we're all grafted into the body of Christ. So we are all related in that sense. But it's also a reminder, not just because we have to take care of family, and that's nothing wrong with that message.
That's a tribal message, though.
It is, but it is very much a reminder to not do what you were talking about, to not immanentize, because it brings it down to a personal level. Because when you say that, it's easy to say, well, of course we cannot perfect this reality because we're in it. We create things that are flawed because we are flawed. What is flawed cannot create what is perfect. But the result of those attempts is when we start doing to the least of these what we ought not to do to him, right? Mm-hmm. So when we lose that respect for the inherent dignity of the human person we love to talk about so much. Well, I love to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. You're so on, man. Like you're just killing it. I love this.
But it is really, to me, it's just such a wonderful reminder of those things. If you're a liberal politically, you probably think, well, of course, that's why we want to take care of everybody. But they want to do it through these perfecting systems, which are not perfect.
Right.
And of course, any opposition is evil. Political conservatives would tell you that, well, this is not the approach that government ought to take. This is what individuals, again, they have a perfect system that is the only way to do it. And if you want to do it the other way, you are evil. Again, it's about not dehumanizing.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's
one another.
Thing. Yeah, because both systems, no matter which side you're on, tend to dehumanize.
Exactly.
We think only of large groups. That makes it easy to dehumanize.
Right. And he doesn't say, when you saw my friends in jail, you didn't come visit them. When you saw my friends hungry, you didn't feed them. So when you saw me, he individualizes it, which, granted, is also a group because as members of the body of Christ, it's both and. It's group as well as individual. That's what we lose sight of too often, is this both and of the group and the individual. It's what makes identity politics so horrible, because it loses the individual and it's that group thing.
Yeah,
it steamrolls over that because it's for the reason of efficiency. I don't know, whatever it is, but they tend to. It's easy to dehumanize what you don't understand. You have to depersonalize so you can dehumanize. That means if you think only in groups, it's easy to do with them as you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if Stalin was the one that said this, but 2 or 3 murders, that's a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic, or you're a statesman.
Yeah. Well, like P.G. O'Rourke said, a mob will never buy you lunch.
Right.
So when you protect the individual, when the individual is at the center of your system, the group takes care of itself.
That's exactly right.
The group can't be abused.
All groups take care
no
of
matter
themselves.
what the group is.
That's exactly
Whatever
right.
your tribal identity.
That's right. That becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, and using tribal in the broadest sense of whatever people decide to identify them, it doesn't matter what your pronouns are if the law respects the individual.
Right. And when we talk about the individual, we don't mean that the individual is supreme above the group, because again, that's taking it the wrong way.
Well, yeah, because that would be an injustice too.
Right.
Because then somebody's ox gets gored.
Right. The rights of the individual have to be balanced with the rights of the group, as well as the responsibilities of the individual have to be balanced with the responsibilities of the group. Hello, Bosco.
We have one of our, what do we say?
Four-legged friends?
A canine member of Snakes and Otters is joining us. So that's awesome.
Anyways, so that's mine. What you do to the least of these, you do to me. It really is not just a statement of how you do ministry as a member of clergy or someone who has a religious activity in their life. It is truly how you should deal with one another. Mm-hmm.
We are our brother's keepers.
To a certain degree.
That's correct. And then
not entirely, because we still have individual responsibility. Correct. But we also have the responsibility to correct our brother.
Well, there's a place, if you've ever been to the Holocaust Museum in D.C., there's the last part of the tour is at the very bottom. It's on the first floor, and there's this grotto with the eternal flame. It's got the names of so many that are on the walls, and it's one of those chilling, eerie moments because it's absolute dead silence. You go in there, but on the walls, it has a quotation from the book of Genesis. It says, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. That's what God said to Cain after he murdered Abel. That encapsulates very clearly what you're talking about here in its most extreme form. We have to care for the other person. Otherwise, we will dehumanize.
Yes. And again, to me, all of this stuff is related. Whether it's the change, immanentizing the eschaton, or what we do to the least of these. Because all of it goes back to the relationship that people have with one another.
That's right.
The moral grounding of society.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Has to recognize all three of these concepts.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that ability to have relationships, So Bosco is down here in the studio, and it's great that he's come to visit because it breaks it up. It's always good to have a dog around.
He say, "What are you talking about, humans?"
But he's over here on his back, making his little Tyrannosaurus Rex legs as he's scratching his back, just wiggling, and it's hard to keep a straight thought in your head. But anyways, I think what I was saying was all this is so interconnected. We have to change, otherwise, we have to. That's just
right. We will. We will.
One way or another.
Right.
Even if it's just from life into death, there is change.
Right.
Not every day is the same. We're not perfect. We cannot make things perfect. We can strive for it, but in striving, we have to recognize that we are individuals as well as members of groups, and that in that striving, we cannot dehumanize one another because we are all members of the same human family.
That's right.
What we look like underneath the half white side, half black side is exactly the same. You peel our skins off, there's no difference.
That's right. We are still human.
We are still human. And so,
wow.
To me,
okay,
it all goes back to that.
Our production planning on this episode, listeners, was minimal.
Most of our code of honors are. We don't really do that much.
We're not kidding.
Yeah,
we were winging this one, and it
always works together.
I did William F. Buckley. You did the Gospels. He's doing Gene L. Coon and Star Trek.
Yeah,
and we weaved every bit of it together into a coherent message.
Yeah, meta narrative.
And we did this, and we probably do this from every one of these, including Hoopajubes, and we say things like, these are just going to be something quick and fun. Now, this was fun.
Yeah.
But this was not comedy.
No.
Well,
the dog was comedy, maybe.
Yeah. But it's just, I don't know. We're going to have to be careful, man. Our heads are going to get so big, we're not going to be able to go back up the stairs.
Hey, when it's good, it's good, right? It's kind of like good bourbon. You know when it's good.
We're going to have to put, on Bosco's collar, "Remember, thou art mortal." Yes. And then he walk around behind, because we're getting kind of big-headed about how good we are at this.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm teasing, but that's tremendous stuff. Tremendous. And again, let's talk about last episode, that passion. And again, how these episodes open this window, and they're so personalized and different from the history episodes. And it's, I
gotta say, for years we've always said that we needed to record these things because, honestly, this kind of stuff we've talked about for years. Listeners are probably going to think that we're blowing smoke up their rear ends. But this is literally the stuff we have talked about for years.
This is what we do when we get together. We always end up going in this direction somehow. We actually sit around, and like the best conversations should do, we talk about life and our place in the universe.
We have fun, and we're not always serious, but this is just another Thursday to us.
That's right.
And I like to think that we're fairly intelligent guys, but not stuck up.
That's right. I agree.
I don't think that we have necessarily anything better to offer than
anybody else. Anybody can do this. Most people just don't.
Do it.
That's right. Most people just don't. That's all.
And it's the synergy of the three of us coming together.
That's correct. Yeah. That's what we have to offer that's different than anything else out there.
And, you talk about it a lot, but this synergy where we build on one another. Mm-hmm. I did not know for sure what quote I was doing until after I sat here and listened to the two of you. That's why I decided to go last. because I wanted to see what you guys were going to do, and that's why I chose the one I did.
And thus, again, very minimal pre-production.
Yes.
And yet we've built something really cool.
Yeah, it was really good. That was
fantastic.
That's good stuff. And,
I mean,
and just, who else is doing this?
Just us.
I mean, okay, Will Ferrell's podcast, Ron Burgundy, is not this.
No, not at all.
No.
Nor do we want to be.
So
Wouldn't mind having their followers, but no, that's, you know,
I mean,
that's a different thing. It's a different thing.
But it's us.
Right.
It's uncompromisingly us.
That is true.
That is correct. It's very
That is
important.
true.
That's right. What do we call ourselves? Uncompromising cultural critics.
Yep.
We definitely
Yep.
do that. That's right. Well, that's great, guys. We've done a fantastic episode yet once again. Make sure, listeners, that you tune back into our next episode. We're going to do our Heroes episode again next time. And we're going to do one I'm excited. Robert, you're going to lead this one. Vincent van Gogh.
Yes.
We're going to talk about him. And is it not really him, his art.
Well, we're going to talk about Van Gogh, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit about him, give some background.
Right.
But I think I want to talk about the impact that he has had as a dead artist compared to the impact he had as a live artist.
This is going to be fascinating.
It is. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Again, it's going to tie to things we've already talked about.
Yeah.
And the visual language of our world is tied to Van Gogh's art.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Make sure you're here. Don't miss it.
thanks for being with us here every week at Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Be sure to spread the word on your social media accounts. Follow us and retweet us. We are on Instagram and on Twitter at Snakes and Otters.
Let your friends know that they can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. Just search Snakes and Otters Podcast to find us, and please remember to leave us your comments and reviews. It helps people find us.
And you can always send us an email at snakesandotterspodcast@gmail.com.
I'm Martin.
I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Catch us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.